morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your latest forecast update valid of the 21st of February 2025. A lot to get through in today's forecast update, including a tropical low expected to become a tropical cyclone offshore from Western Australia shortly. It could become a powerful cyclone at that. And then the one over in Queensland, which the forecast models are still very confused about. However, we could still be seeing some minor impacts along the North Queensland coastline throughout the next couple of days. If you are brand new to the channel, please do consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things this morning over in Queensland, the Coral Sea, with this tropical low here developing quite nicely offshore from far north Queensland. It's got some good convection now bubbling up around a low pressure centre that's starting to become more and more defined. You might be able to see it here on the wind observations. You can see winds now out of the southeast along some of the shoals south of this system, low pressure system, Willis Island, then out towards Bougainville and Flinders and Holmes Reef. Through here you can see winds averaging between 30 and 40 kilometres an hour, gusting up to about 55 or 60 kilometres an hour across some of these places here. So it certainly is starting to get a little bit blustery, and those showers really are starting to kick up on the backside of this system here. It doesn't look like we're going to get a radar loop loading in, however, of this system, but you can see it has done a pretty nice job of developing over the last couple of hours, and it really is starting to look the part now for fully fledged tropical low. Again, this satellite imagery really just doesn't look to be loading in this morning, so we'll try a different frame here, but you can see, yeah, it's certainly got some good convection now starting to bubble up around that common low pressure centre, which is just stacked pretty nicely between these two bursts of convection. So it certainly doesn't look awful, is what I'm trying to say here. It's still got a lot of work to do, which it will do over the coming couple of days, but it doesn't look awful at this time. Now, the forecast is what's really making me scratch my head this morning. I mean, I thought we had it down pat with the major forecast models now calling for the system to swing pretty far out to sea, and there be a minor impact to Queensland maybe at the first couple of days of March with the system swinging into Rockhampton. Well, that's now off the cards, and we'll have a look at what the forecast models are suggesting right now. And I would just like to preface this by saying that Queensland is at zero risk of receiving a tropical cyclone impact in the next 4 or 5 days. Beyond that, the forecast is a little bit uncertain, but then very far beyond that, then the forecast does start to increase a little bit for potential risks around Mackay or Rockhampton. But at this time, if the forecast does change for impacts in your location, be plenty of congruency and plenty of time to prepare adequately. Let's take a look at what the EastMLF has to say here. I'm a big fan of the EastMLF forecast this morning. You can see slowly developing pretty much right over the top of Willis Island throughout tonight, tomorrow, and even out towards Sunday until it starts to head further towards the east throughout Sunday afternoon. Likely to begin intensifying into tropical cyclone territory late Sunday night into early Monday morning, attaining tropical cyclone status through Monday, I believe here. Then this system continues to head towards the east through Monday and Tuesday before making a turn towards the south come around Wednesday. This has been what the EastMLF has been saying for pretty much the last week. There's been literally zero change between this forecast model and the Axis G3 forecast model over the last week. It's only the GFS right now that's flip-flopping. The Bureau of Meteorology is also expecting the system to follow this track here, which is just another reason for me to be confident that this storm is going to very slowly develop and very slowly move over the coming couple of days before heading out towards the east and making that southerly turn once it's south of the Solomon Islands sometime around Sunday or Tuesday rather, in towards Wednesday. This system will then head south, paralleling the coast between New Caledonia and Queensland before heading down towards Norfolk Island and then New Zealand. It never gets up to a significant tropical cyclone intensity as per the EastMLF forecast, but I guess this is a bit of a low ball of forecast at times. The axis does take this up to a respectable intensity. You can see here as we push it back through Wednesday and Tuesday, this system here is well and truly up to Category 3 strength, severe tropical cyclone status. In fact, it achieves tropical cyclone status by the looks of things on Sunday afternoon and evening before rapid intensification through Sunday night into Monday morning, bringing it up to severe tropical cyclone status by Monday evening and potentially close to Category 4 status through Monday, Tuesday, and then in towards Wednesday as well as it skirts the coast of New Caledonia. Again, this system is going to be a small system as per this forecast. Whilst the core of this system will be small, its influence is likely to be quite large. You can see between the EastMLF, the GFS, and the Axis G3 forecast, the system is being kept at a relatively small size in terms of the immediate wind swathe, so it is susceptible to its environment, but it will still provide the Queensland coastline with some gusty showers, especially through later this weekend into early next week, and that is going to happen pretty much fairly much regardless of development. We're going to be seeing those showers and gusty winds along the Queensland coastline. This system here will weaken off through Wednesday night into Thursday morning, and whilst it doesn't really matter how strong it gets, considering it is a very far out to sea system, certainly an interesting aspect of the forecast and one that we'll be watching quite closely. Pushing this forecast forward into the dying days of February, you can see it makes that turn for the southeast Queensland coastline very briefly, as you can see on Friday, and then in towards Saturday the 1st of March, and then it looks like a bit of a stalling motion might kick in here before this system takes a really interesting track back up where it's been basically, and that's also semi-reciprocated between the EastMLF forecast. You can see it stalls for quite an extended period of time south of New Caledonia, halfway between New Zealand and southeast Queensland, in all honesty. So this is certainly something we're going to have to keep a very close eye on, and I think the stalling motion that these forecast models are suggesting is just because of the lack of certainty with where the forecast is, where the storm is going to be going, at least on the forecast. But yeah, for now now, I think the most likely track is a very far out to sea track in the middle of the Coral Sea, heading out towards New Caledonia and Vanuatu, and then that southerly turn happening sometime around Monday night into Tuesday. It could get up to severe tropical cyclone status, but it's going to be far out to sea, so again, absolutely no impacts expected, and hardly any impacts either expected to the Coral Sea Islands. In terms of the strong winds threat, they're going to be most prevalent around the Whitsundays and into the Mackay area, and even down the coast into exposed coastal locations as far south as Rockhampton. We could be seeing wind speeds there averaging 40 to 50 kilometres an hour throughout this weekend and into the first couple of days of next week, with peak gusts up to about 70 kilometres an hour. And you can see here between the Eastern Weather forecast model that the wind accumulation is actually suggesting some not strong winds, but certainly winds that are worth keeping a close eye on. So again, if you live in a really exposed location, I'd imagine that you're going to be getting some pretty gusty showers moving through. The rainfall threat not looking like too much of a significant aspect either. There will be a couple of good drops of rainfall here and there, especially up towards Proserpine. We could be seeing up to about 200 to 250 millimetres, but for the most part along the coast to be 20 to 80 millimetres over the next week. The Caspary Coast is a different story, but I'll get to that in just a few moments. Now, we're not done here with a forecast for this Coral Sea tropical low, but you can take all of what I've said as basically that's the forecast, that's what's going to be happening. But for trivial sake, let's take a look at what the GFS is saying here. Now, the GFS is still a plausible scenario, and the fact that the GFS has been calling for this Queensland landfall for the last 4 days is certainly nothing to sweep under the rug, that's for sure, especially considering the GFS has a reputation of being an incredibly reliable forecast model, both in terms of track and intensity. I would also like to say that the GFS has an incredible reputation for throwing out some absolute rubbish at times, and I think this is a bit of a forecast model where we've seen this happen all too often this year over in the Coral Sea. You can see significant intensification starting Sunday night through Monday and in towards Tuesday, bring this up to about Category 4 strength severe tropical cyclone status, and then making its rush for Queensland, making a direct hit over on top of Townsville. I mean, they'd have to be super unlucky to receive that. Record-breaking floods and then a severe tropical cyclone impact happening just 2 weeks after that. That would be really, really unlucky for them, and thankfully it is from the GFS forecast model, because that is, again, a notoriously unreliable forecast model in this stretch here. And I really don't think that North Queensland, especially North Queensland, I think if a landfall is going to happen, it's going to be central or even southeast Queensland has a better shot than North Queensland. But yeah, I just thought I'd show you this just to, put all doubts at rest. Whilst there is certainly the chance of a Queensland landfall from this tropical cyclone, it's not a good chance at this time. It's not a high chance at all. And it really doesn't look like if it does make a landfall, it's going to bring significant impacts ashore. And in fact, the significant impacts are probably going to remain at strong winds and heavy rainfall along the North Queensland and parts of the central Queensland coastline. But yeah, I just thought I'd show you this to kind of put all of the worry to bed, I guess. This is not going to happen. I don't think that the GFS forecast model is going to happen. If we were to see a tropical cyclone landfall or a tropical cyclone track towards Queensland, mark my words, we would have plenty of notice along the Queensland coastline. I'm talking days upon days upon days. So there's no need to prepare for this system right now. There's no need to panic for this system, whilst there is certainly the chance at this time, and it's certainly worth keeping in the back of your head, if this tropical cyclone is to swing into the Queensland coastline, we will likely have about 4 or 5 days to prepare adequately for this tropical cyclone, and it's also not likely to be an apocalyptic weather event like Tropical Cyclone Zelia. We'd be talking about a Category 2 or 3 strength tropical cyclone landfall, and that's nothing Queensland hasn't seen before. So again, it's not going to be the end of the world if we do see a Queensland swing in this here. We'll know for sure what's going to happen in terms of the track come around Sunday when the system does begin its actual development up towards tropical cyclone status. It will be very clear by Sunday, I imagine, what's going to be happening here, but just the next few days we're going to have to tough it out with a little bit of uncertainty in the forecast. Certainly some really good conditions ahead of this storm though, and I would just like to briefly talk about those. Sea temperatures in the central Coral Sea between 30 and 31 degrees Celsius. A little bit cooler as you get down towards New Caledonia, 28 pushing 29, even 30 degrees in some locations, but this storm is not going to struggle with a fuel source. Plenty of energy available here for it to sap out of the Coral Sea, which would be very good considering we are expected that run of moisture to pipe up again sometime around mid to late March. So the more moisture it can take out of the Coral Sea, the better it is for Queensland when that rainfall does return up there. We're not done with the tropical cyclone threat over in Western Australia. We've got a tropical low beginning to develop quite nicely now well offshore from the Pilbara and the Kimberley coastline. You can see it's pretty much directly north of Karratha. This system is really moving along right now towards the west at about 25 kilometres an hour. It's wasting absolutely no time to get out to the good tropical cyclone development grounds, and it's really developing along quite nicely. I'm not 100% sure how well developed the lower level centre is from this tropical cyclone, but wind observations suggest that it is starting to become quite mature at this time, with good winds out of the northeast, which is what we want to see at Rowley Shoals here, and winds out of the north towards the northeast happening up here around the Kimberley region, Adele Island, then Derby through here. So we've got some good wind observations that are supporting the development of this system right now. It does look like the convection, so the thunderstorms are a little bit displaced from the tropical low centre of circulation here, which is a little bit of concern. It's certainly got a little bit more organisation to do, and I reckon that's why the Bureau of Meteorology was really confused in terms of what to post here for the forecast. They've kept it, I think confused is the wrong word, they're definitely not what they're talking about, but they've kept it at a relatively low intensity on their forecast, which is completely fair enough, considering that this system hasn't formed yet, and you can see it is expected to form through tonight into tomorrow morning. But there's not going to be much stopping this tropical cyclone at all, especially once it gets itself further out, seeing that sea temperatures start to rise again up to about 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. Rapid to borderline explosive intensification is possible through Saturday night into Sunday morning, and this system will likely be at peak intensity sometime Monday night into Tuesday night, sometime between that time frame there, well offshore from the West Australian coastline. As a very small system, and if you know one thing about tropical cyclones, those small systems can become absolute brutes in terms of intensity. The GFS forecast model still not on board pretty much whatsoever with this tropical cyclone in terms of high wind speeds, which isn't surprising to me considering it is a low resolution forecast model, so it is going to struggle here. But I reckon that this system is not 100% guaranteed, of course, considering it hasn't formed, but I reckon it's about 90% certain that this system is going to become a severe tropical cyclone at some point in its life. That's how far I'm calling for this tropical cyclone to go. It's really going to become a significant tropical cyclone, and it's really lucky that it isn't going to be going for the West Australian coastline, not at least in the immediate forecast future, and I'll get to why I said that in just a few moments, so stick around for that. But in terms of impacts on Western Australia, no impacts are expected, which is very good news, but this is, like I said, not going to be much stopping this tropical cyclone at all. Let's load up those sea temperatures now and have a look at what's expected. 28 pushing 29 degrees Celsius in some locations. If it heads further north, it's going to be 29 pushing 30 degrees for a lot of locations here. That's warm enough to sustain a Category 5 strength severe tropical cyclone. They're only going to drop off once this system gets south of Exmouth, and when it will start to weaken. And again, a small tropical cyclone with not too much convection to worry about will have plenty of time and plenty of ability to organise quite rapidly, and will have a very easy time putting on knots at a rate of knots as well. So this system not going to be much standing in the way of it becoming a significant tropical cyclone, and I think I'm pretty confident in saying that at this time, even though the low pressure system hasn't formed just yet. Now, why I say that this is no short range threat at the WA coastline is because it could come back to the southwest corner of Western Australia sometime around the 26th or the 27th, even a little bit later than that actually, and cause a few problems in terms of rainfall down for the southwest corner of Western Australia. We're expecting the low pressure system to meet its demise offshore from Geraldton, and when I say offshore, I mean well offshore from Geraldton, about as far away as Geraldton is from Karratha. That's how far offshore it is, but you know, offshore from Geraldton here, the low pressure system will likely meet its demise, but strong winds expected to whip around the southwest capes, and likely a little bit of rainfall here and there as well for the southwest capes as well. A few showers here and there, especially through Wednesday and Thursday. Not too much in the way of rainfall though. Could also spark a couple of thunderstorms here and there into the first couple of days of March as this low pressure system, or its remnant energy at least, gets dragged across the northern area, the central areas of Western Australia. I'm really getting my geography scrambled, and I don't know why that is. But yeah, certainly some interesting stuff, that's for sure. The rainfall forecast that we were looking at a couple of days ago of 100 millimetres, and I said that that was very unlikely to happen, is pretty much completely dropped here from the forecast models, and I wonder why. I mean, it's not really expected to track close to West Australia, even though other forecast models do suggest some more meaningful rainfall. I mean, the GFS calling for about 25 millimetres around the southwest capes. I don't think all of that's going to materialise, and I reckon if a bit of rainfall does happen, it's going to be from thunderstorms into the first couple of days of March around the Goldfields area, and a couple of showers here and there between Augusta and Albany. That's kind of pretty normal for them, even at this time of the year. A couple of showers down there is nothing out of the ordinary, that's for sure. But yeah, certainly this is going to be a very interesting tropical cyclone to track. It's likely to become a strong one again, and have a look at the convection. It's looking really healthy as well, especially on the infrared and satellite imagery. It's a solid blob north of northwest and Western Australia. Very interesting to look at, that's for sure, and I'm very excited to track this tropical cyclone, especially considering it's at its closest approach to WA right now. I reckon it's going to form sometime tomorrow afternoon into a tropical cyclone at least. The Bureau of Meteorology has been really conservative with this system, both in terms of intensity and also calling for this system to develop, taking its merry time. But again, it does have a lot of organisation to do, and even though it's a small system, it will struggle to get its act together over the coming couple of days. But yeah, that is enough talk on tropical cyclones for this forecast update so far. Let's head over towards Queensland and just touch on the rainfall situation over there. Now, whilst there's no rainfall expected immediately in the next 14 days across much of North Queensland, you can see, apart from a good glob over in far North Queensland expected over the coming couple of days from showers and thunderstorms up there, which I'm going to dive into depth in tomorrow morning's forecast update, because some good showers are expected throughout the remainder of today and in towards tomorrow as well. But I'll get to that in tomorrow morning's forecast update, and there'll be a Facebook post on it as well. In terms of the rainfall there, about 300 to 400 millimetres can be expected. Some locations might pick up more, and then as you get further inland, rainfall accumulations will be between 50 and 100 millimetres and quite a lot less than that. Rainfall is expected to pipe up in North Queensland, pretty much over the entirety of Queensland, actually, with southeast Queensland and the northeast of New South Wales not missing out as we get in towards April as well. Sometime around March 20th, this rainfall will return. So again, soak up the dry conditions. You've got less than a month of them. At this time, of course, give or take, the rainfall could come a couple of days earlier, a couple of days later, but it certainly looks like the long-range forecast, in line with the Madan-Julian oscillation, is expecting a return to monsoonal downpours across North Queensland sometime around mid to late March. So again, we'll be keeping an eagle eye out for that on the CyclonesOZ channel. In terms of precursors and signs of that already, we should already be starting to see them on the long-term forecast well out into the South Pacific Ocean, and you can see here plenty of showers and plenty of rainfall expected as we get out towards the 7th of March through here north of Fiji. We're well out to sea here, well away from Australia, but these moisture bands will only be a couple of days behind it over for northern Australia, so I'm really starting to see the long-term possibility of rainfall piping up again across northern Australia very shortly, that's for sure, and time will fly, mark my word. So again, soak up the sunshine, soak up the dry weather across North Queensland. I mean, the Cassowary Coast, there's no such thing as dry weather pretty much for 9 months of the year up there, but around Townsville and Mackay, with not much rainfall in the forecast for the next 14 days, really soak it up because you're going to need it. The rainfall will be returning pretty shortly, and then unfortunately for central Queensland as well, if we take a look at the drought monitoring map here, they need some rainfall, that's for sure. And thankfully there is some good rainfall on the long-range forecast, but it is a high uncertainty forecast, unfortunately. So for those around Rockhampton, Gladstone, Bundaberg, even down towards the Sunshine Coast, and even in towards the southeast corners of Queensland, where soil moisture values are very far below average at this time, even in the deep layer, the rainfall will be returning semi-shortly. I mean, give it a month and a half or so, but at this time the rainfall forecast is still a little bit too uncertain to comment about, so it's a good thing to keep in the back of your head, but certainly nothing to get your hopes up at this time, that's for sure. I don't want to be bursting anyone's bubble by saying, yeah, there's rainfall on the forecast, and then it never eventuates. So again, at this time, a very slim chance of rainfall happening across southeast Queensland, and I imagine that is not the news a lot of people wanted to hear, that's for sure. And just in terms of that drought monitoring across interior parts of Western Australia, look at how far above average it is after the rainfall from Tropical Cyclone Zelia. Some huge rainfall accumulations reported out there, and it's going to take months for the Kimberley region and the Pilbara region to properly dry out from this. So again, four-wheel driving into the dying days of the wet season, especially around May and into June up in the Kimberley region, Karanjini is going to be incredible, with a lot of those places already still saturated from Tropical Cyclone Zelia. Lots of green grass, lots of rainfall up there. It's going to be very, very lush, that's for sure. And the rainfall isn't stopping anytime soon as well for interior parts of Western Australia. Normally the wet season does actually start to drop off around interior parts of Northern Australia into the first couple of weeks of March and into the first couple of weeks of April, especially across the far north. But in terms of the rainfall, certainly a couple more weeks of good rainfall expected across interior parts of WA. And on that note, certainly starting to waffle about stuff that isn't really relevant to the immediate forecast. I do hope you've enjoyed today's forecast update. I apologise for the switch in microphone audio. It looks like my initial microphone decided to cark it halfway through the video, so again, I do apologise for that. I apologise for the lackluster audio quality. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Again, I couldn't run the show without them, and their support is much appreciated. But that is all from me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.